Alright, so I guess what a crazy day. That copyright, whatever, claim on my video made me find a whole bunch of new information. Interesting that in the last piece that I talked about Acts 2:19 and 2:20 in regards to the blood moon. I also even mentioned how in 2:19, which I've been mentioning a lot of 219 with back-to-back championships. Also, last year, the Philadelphia train wreck that happened, it happened at 9:23, and it was 219 days before Pope Francis turned 79. And there's a whole bunch of other connections with 219. But anyway, Acts 2:19 in the Bible says, "And I will shew wonders in heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke." And I said, how crazy is that this past year we've had, I live in Iowa, but there's been the Canadian wildfires, and the first time ever in my entire 33 years of life, I see smoke everywhere. Like, you go outside right now, there's smoke everywhere. And I just thought that was pretty interesting in regards to this Bible verse. And then the next one is about the blood moons, that I'm almost positive they're trying to show me something to do with these blood moons. Anyway, after I made that video, I made supper and did all that stuff, and Claire's finally laying down here. I got back on CNN to see if anything's going on, and look at this. Headline story, wildfire smoke reaches Iowa. What are the odds of that? I mean, it's craziness. Why Iowa? It's just weird, you know? Especially since I'm from Iowa. But anyway, let's just watch this video here. I just want to show you a few things that actually fit into everything that I've been talking about.
Canadian authorities say the massive wildfire could double in size today because of the dry and windy weather. Terrible news for nearly 100,000 people who have been forced to leave everything behind.
It looked like the place would be all burned.
Look at this girl's name. I mean, just a strange name to begin with. I know supposedly she's from, like, the Congo or whatever. I think that's what they say. But interesting, Chanel Ohello. Right? Hell sticks out a lot, but in regards, just in general, Ohello, that just sounds like a completely made up name. This little girl acts like she's reading a script, and she stumbles on it even. But let's just keep watching it here.
I'm scared if my house would be burned down, my room, my stuff, my clothes. And I'm scared if my school will be burnt too.
Right now, the fire is already the size of Hong Kong, and it has produced so much smoke that people as far south as Florida can actually see it. CNN's Paul Brickhammond is in Edmonton, and that's where many of the evacuees are staying. We understand that you were actually at an evacuation center. We heard from that little girl worried about her school, her house. What other stories are you hearing from people there?
Just heartbreaking stories, Fred. In fact, I spoke with that little girl and I talked to her mom, and it's just astounding to hear for them. They describe these flames, extremely tall flames, because of the very huge pine tree that you have here. They got out with their lives, but in a sense it was double jeopardy for the mom in this case, because she's been a refugee once before in her life, and let's just listen to her story.
It's heartbreaking because I don't know if I have anything to go back to. I'm ready.
All right. This is that girl's mom. Look at this. Look at her name. God Eliv Ohello. They spelled Ohello with one L here instead of two. Her kid, they wrote two L's. God Alive Ohello. I mean, come on. Just think about that. And everything I've just mentioned in my past two videos, now God Alive Ohello is giving a deal. Let's type it in here in Gematria. God Alive Ohello. 134, the number that I keep mentioning over and over in regards to May 13th, I believe. It could be something else, but it sure seems to be pointing a lot to the 513 that I've seen over and over and over as well. I mean, just what are the odds? God alive, oh hello, 134. Anyway, let's just keep watching this video.
Don't know. And that didn't, when I was 7 years old, I went through the same thing. I left the Congo to come here. So it brings back those memories so bad. The last few nights for me, I haven't slept. I'm up all night. I realized that I'm a refugee again in a country that I thought I won't be a refugee. So it's so heartbreaking.
So anyway, let's scroll down this article. I just wanted to point out a few more things here. So it talks about the refugees, right? A downpour is needed to tame the fire that is the size of Hong Kong and almost 25% bigger than New York City. It has displaced about 88,000 people. I mean, give me a break. The last video, it all started with a video about 88 and how the death of Prince had to do with the color purple. It also tied into the royal family. King Charles III equals 134. Purple equals 88. Obama, his whole presidency, there's been articles like this with 88 in them. Trump equals 88. I also mentioned how 88 always seems to be a number that in movies and everything else, and also articles, has to do with satanic rituals. So just interesting with the names here, you know. God alive, oh hello. I'm not so sure the God who is alive is the one that we want to be alive. So it's crazy how it's all just built up, you know. Even, I don't know, I just typed in McMurray. Fort McMurray is where this fire began. McMurray just so happens to have gematria of 112. A number I've been mentioning a whole lot. Sandy Hook equals 112. 112 is the emergency dialing code in Europe. Prince died on the 112th day of the year. Queen Elizabeth's birthday was the 112th day of the year. Also, the Simpsons episode that killed Prince and also Neil Armstrong, the first guy to walk on the moon, and also George Clooney, came out on 11/2, November 2nd. So anyway, I just went back to the calendar and I was messing around again, just trying to figure out how some of this connects. And I went from the very first blood moon of that tetrad, and I just went to 5/13. I noticed it was a span of 2 years, 28 days. That is super interesting for the fact that the word death equals 228 in gematria. But also, if you go from the very last one, or at least the full one, which was on 9/28 or 9/27, 9/28, the night of, or whatever. Anyway, 9/28 is the official day. 9/28, 228 days. So the first one to 5/13 is a span of 2 years, 28 days. The last one to 5/13, 228 days. And literally the word death equals 228. The second blood moon just so happened to be on October 8th, 2014, which is 10/8, 2014. If you write out the word 228, it just so happens to equal 108, a lot like 10/8. If you go from that day to 5/13, a span of 1 year, 7 months, 5 days, an interesting number, 9/11 had a number 175 involved in it. Also, this one involved the number 56, a number that I've seen a lot this year in regards to, or in the past year with bad things. President also equals 56. But Flight 175 was the one that hit the South Tower. It had 56 passengers, also a total of 65, the mirror of 56. But the South Tower didn't collapse for 56 minutes after Flight 175 with 56 passengers hit it. I mean, come on. The odds of that are ridiculous. Also, you know, like I'm telling you, Paris, France equals 56, ISIS equals 56, Osama bin Laden equals 56, Adolf Hitler equals 56. Saddam Hussein equals 56. Abraham Lincoln died at the age of 56 in the year 65. He even died in the month of April, the only month that adds up to 56. So just interesting, that really stuck out to me with this 108. I've also mentioned the 108 in regards to the Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors equals 108 in Gematria. Interesting tonight, if you watch the game where they lost, they ended with 108 points. It happens all the time, and people still think it's not rigged or whatever. I don't know how it's rigged. People can't believe that it's maybe, everybody says there's no way all these people would have to be in on it. Possibly, or maybe, I'm a true believer that there's something a lot bigger going on, and somehow I think a lot of these players do know, but they don't even actually do it themselves. I think there's something bigger, somehow it being done, but I feel like they know how that it's being done, because you can just tell by the way that some of them play at some points in the game. Like all of a sudden they just start like throwing away the ball, like just making the most ridiculous passes for no reason whatsoever when the score is a certain number or they have to get a certain score. I mean, like I said, I don't know how it's done, but I've proven it over and over and over. So, interesting, the Golden State Warriors scored 108 points again tonight. They even made a 3 at the very end, but it didn't count. It would have been 111. Interesting, because 9/11 is a day that leaves 111 days left until the end of the year. Normally, in a non-leap year, the day that Queen Elizabeth turned 90, also the day that Prince died, is the 111th day of the year. And when a lot of this first started with YouTube copyright striking my videos, it was about the movie 21 Jump Street that came out on the 165th day of the year. I also mentioned how they did it 165 days after my birthday. 22 in Gematria equals 165. I put the video up 165 days after the movie came out. Anyway, if you go from the day 22 Jump Street came out to 5/13, just so happens to be 1 year, 11 months, a lot like 111. So anyway, the last blood moon, or the third blood moon, happened on 4/4, a very interesting day of 2015. If you go from that day to 5/13, span of 1 year, 1 month, 9 days. A lot like the reverse 9/11. Also like Star of David equals 119. Interesting, it's almost 58 weeks, but it was 57 weeks away. So just super interesting. We got a 175 and a 119 in between the two that go together to make death. So, like I'm saying, I don't know for sure, but YouTube is sure trying to tell me something about this 134, and this is the 134th day. Who knows? Maybe it is something that is connected to that, but not necessarily. Interesting, Zachary K. Hubbard was talking about this day, 5/23, and how it's the 144th day of the year. If you write out April 4th, it equals 144. If you write out 44, it equals 144. A whole bunch of other stuff with it. The last 144 digits after the decimal of pi sum to 666. Lots of stuff in regards to presidential assassinations on this day and whatnot. But he's talking about 5/23, which is 10 days later. And Abraham Lincoln had a dream 10 days before he died or was shot. And then even like RFK, he gave a speech in Roseburg, Oregon, and then died 10 days later. Obama gave a speech at Roseburg, Oregon this year. It was on October 9th, which is interesting how close it is to the October 8th. But 10 days later in Gematria, 10 days later equals 144. And this is the 144th day. So maybe it just has something to do with that. My birthday also just seems super important, that 11/10. If you go from the day of the first blood moon to my birthday of this year, And look at that. The first blood moon to my birthday this year. 2 years, 6 months, 26 days. 26. Also, 134 weeks and 2 days. This 26 just stands out. There's been so much 26, 62, 666, just lots of sixes this year. And this new copyright strike that I got, or copyright claim, I guess, just so happened to be about the video that I put out on 2/6 on Queen Elizabeth's 64th anniversary of being the Queen. I've been all about the NBA this year. The NBA Finals began on 6/2. It also just so happens to be Queen Elizabeth's 63rd anniversary of her coronation that day. Also interesting, the 134 weeks and 2 days. Well, if you go back 2 days then to make it exactly 134 weeks from the first blood moon, it just so happens to take you to the day that the presidential election is, 11/8. The word death also just so happens to be 118. So in Jewish gematria, death equals 118. So just really sticks out to me, I guess. I don't know. 134 weeks after the first blood moon is the day of the election. Also in the previous video, I talked about the partial blood moon that was on 3/23. My name in Jewish gematria equals 323. If you go from my 33rd birthday to that day, it's a span of 134 days. But if you go from this day to my 34th birthday, it's a span of 232 days. I mean 323, 232. But what's even more interesting is, I've mentioned this before, Kansas, the 34th state, just so happens to equal 232 in gematria. I will be 34 years old. Also, Satan equals 232. So, I mean, it's super interesting that Lucifer equals 323, Satan equals 232. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say it's all about me. I could care less. But I think there's something significant about this day. But it's just interesting that my name even equals this. So, it's pretty strange. Even more strange is that the fact that the reason I even mentioned Kansas is because there was the train derailment that happened on Pi Day this year. It happened on 3/14. November 10th, this year is the 315th day, but every other year it's literally the 314th day. I mean, so it's just like Pi. It's Pi Day. The Kansas train derailment was on Pi Day. If you go from my birthday last year, that was on the 314th day of the year, which also, by the way, in regards to the 56 stuff, the date numerology of this day was 56. I even made a video talking about how 5 months, 6 days later, I got really sick on another date that has 56 numerology. It was April 16th, I believe, the first day of the NBA playoffs and whatnot, where Steph Curry hurt his ankle, but then in the game that he hurt his knee with the score was 56-56, and it was also, that play started with 4.4 seconds left. Tons of other stuff with it, but check this out. There's a whole lot of 112, but if you go from this day to Pi Day, span of 4 months, 4 days. Also 125 days, the Philadelphia train wreck last year happened on May 12th, which can be written as 12/5. When the Warriors got their 73rd win, they won with 125 points. The only time that they scored 125 in the season, other than that game, was against the Chicago Bulls, the team that they broke the record of. So just a couple more things here. As I was looking back on a few of these things that I was talking about, if you go from the date of the last blood moon and you go to 5/13, it's also a span of 7 months, 15 days. I've also talked about July 15th because this year, July 15th, is the 197th day of the year. Interesting, when I started this video, I was talking about how CNN had the whole Iowa wildfire smoke. If you write out Iowa wildfire smoke, it equals 197. Just like Prince in gematria, Jewish gematria, just like LeBron. If you write out Charles, I've talked about the English Civil War, and also if Queen Elizabeth dies, her son, Prince Charles, become King Charles III. Charles equals 207, but if you write out 207, it equals 197. So just interesting that Iowa wildfire smoke, like the CNN article wrote in there, equals 197. Also, when I think of Iowa, the only president that was from Iowa just so happened to be Herbert Hoover, who was the 31st president, if I can find it. The 31st president. If you write out the word 31 equals 134. Herbert Hoover, the only president from Iowa, the 31st president. But when he was president, the Great Depression happened. And the Great Depression, or the crash of Wall Street and all that, but the Wall Street crashed on October 24th, 1929. And if you go from the first blood moon to October 24th of this year, just so happens to be 923 days. So, I mean, how funny is that, too? The 29th state, the only president from the 29th state becomes the president in the year 1929, the year of the Great Depression and all that. I mean, in a gematria, look at this here. The Great Depression. I know I've talked about this before. The Great Depression equals 91. It happened in 1929. Which also just so happens to equal 91. And remember, in the very first part of this, today when I've been talking about it, the video that I put up was on 2000. Here we go. Hold on 1 second. The video I put up was on February 6th of this year, and then they gave me the copyright thing 91 days later. Also, 3 months, 1 day. Herbert Hoover, the only president from Iowa, the 31st president. And I mean, just messed up that I'm from Iowa. It's unbelievable. And I actually live on western Iowa, so I live like 50 to, depends on where you go in Omaha, I live about 50 minutes away. So I live a lot closer to Omaha, but Omaha in gematria also equals that 228, just like I talked about with the blood moons. You remember, I made a post on how Obama, right after his State of the Union address this year, the next place he went was Omaha, and there was a whole bunch of 109 in the story. Omaha, Nebraska equals 109. I've even talked about the floods and the nuclear power plant that's in Fort Calhoun that's like just north of Omaha, but there was a whole lot of 109. Los Angeles also equals 109. Can't even remember it all. He gave a speech at Baxter Arena that equals 109. So, I guess just interesting. I made a post on it a really long time ago, back in January. And it was in regards to this Ben Carson and this Braden Joplin who had died. Ben Carson and Braden Joplin both equal 57. The number today is 57. The number that they keep showing me with Prince and whatnot. So, who knows? Gonna end it there. I'll probably make another one if I find more stuff, but have a good one.